Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's OneLIMS webinar, Stop the Lab Chaos, Map Your Way to Flow with Lean Thinking. I'm Philipp Osterwalder, and I'm your guide for today's session. We specialize in digitalizing laboratory processes, but today we're stepping back from digital tools to focus on something even more fundamental. So how we think about processes themselves. In many labs are under pressure to deliver results faster, comply to stricter regulations, and also adapt to growing complexity. But what often holds them back isn't technology. In my experience, it's unstructured, inefficient workflows that no one has ever really visualized from start to finish. That's why we invented Dr. Christoph Lustenberger to speak today. Christoph is not only an experienced lean expert, he has helped organizations across industries moving from reactive firefighting to proactive improvement. This approach combines scientific rigor with pragmatic insights. And that's what makes his perspective so valuable, especially for production and laboratories. Before we start, just a few housekeeping points. Number one, the session is being recording. We'll send out a link afterwards so you can rewatch or share it. Feel free to enter your questions directly in the chat during the presentation. We will answer some of them live at the end in our Q&A session. And if we run out of time, we will follow up with written answers via mail. If you like to have a copy of the presentation slides, just send us a quick note via hello@onelims.com or directly to Christoph. And finally, this is a space for dialogue. Don't hold back with your questions. Lean is all about transparency. Also put together some goals for today. Let's take a look at what we want to achieve today in this webinar. By the end of the session, you will or should have built and shared understanding of lean principles and how they apply to production, laboratories, and technical operations beyond the factory floor. Number two is to learn to identify and categorize the 8 types of waste that quietly drains time and resources, often without being noticed. Number 3 is understanding the structure and use of value stream mapping, VSM, a core lean method or a tool that makes invisible workflows visible and actionable. See how continuous improvement processes, CIP, provides not just a method, but a mindset to drive sustained structure change. And the last goal for today's session is understanding the relationship between material and information flow and how aligning them leads to better performance and fewer surprises. Whether you're a lab manager, a quality lead, or part of a digitalization team, these principles will give you a strategic lens to spot gaps and also unlock value. What do global manufacturers, Swiss precision, and lean philosophy have in common? They all converge in work of Dr. Christoph Lustenberger, a rare breed of thinker and practitioner who has spent the last 2 decades turning complexity into clarity and friction into flow. Christoph began his journey at ETH Zurich, where he earned his degree in food process engineering. Not content with a surface level understanding, he completed a doctorate on pressure-driven separation and drying processes, laying the foundation for career that consistently blends scientific rigor with operational pragmatism. From there, his path led into the heart of industry, At Mondelez, he drove continuous improvement in fast-paced food production settings. Later, as a head of global lean management at Cimpress, he built structure for performance transformation across an international production network. But in 2019, Christoph decided to shift gears and focus entirely on helping others improve. He founded Stetig Besser, a consulting firm dedicated to making organizations more focused, resilient, and adaptive. The name says it all. Stetig means consistent, continuous, steady. Today, Christoph is not just a lean expert, he's a system thinker, a trainer of future leaders at Zurich University of Applied Science, and a trusted advisor to companies serious about fixing what's broken, not just optimizing what's visible. He's also a trusted partner of OneLIMS for initial assessment to evaluate the current state of labs before we start the digitalization. His perspective is valuable, especially for laboratories and production, because he doesn't start with tools. He begins by thinking. He believes every process tells a story, and his method is to make that story visible so that teams can change it. In today's session, Christoph will walk us through the principles and practices of value stream mapping, not as a theory, but as a strategic lens to spot waste, align teams, and design flow. Please join me and welcome me, Dr. Christoph Lustenberger. Nice to having you.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks that I can speak and give a insight into my work in regards of how we stop the chaos in production or lab, and how we could use one of the possible tools, value stream mapping. So I take over the presentation.
Yes, the stage is yours. You can see already your screen.
Is that working?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the input session, how we could stop the lab chaos by using value stream mapping and lean thinking along the way. The content of today's session, Philip already mentioned most of it, is we go first into the what's value creation and waste in regards of lean, including the 8 forms of waste. Then we have a short insight into continuous improvement, and mainly from the point of view of how do we think and what's the basis of the mindset when we do that on a daily basis. Then we dive into the topic in more detail in regards of value stream mapping and design. And I show you 2 models. One is the typical used model in production environment, probably some of you know. And the second model we see more and more coming up, being used for administration, as well as very usable for lab processes, is the PPMN, business process model and notification, being used more and more. And this is based on a flow on different swim lanes we visualize with standard symbols. So these are the 2 methods we have a short dive into. We cannot do all of it, as we know. If there is more detail needed later on, we can follow up on that. And then we close up with a short summary at the end, and we take questions and are open for more inputs and thoughts. So let's start with the first point. What's value creation and what's not value creation or waste in the terms of lean? So when we look from the lean point of view at a process, we always care about time. A lot of people think it's money, or most people would say it's money, but that's not where we start. We always start on a process view And the thing we are most interested in, if there's one KPI, it's time. And we look at the total throughput time, as we see on this slide. Just going here shortly. On this slide from left to right. And in a process starting on the left and ending on the right, for example, when we do a lab analysis, the sample gets delivered to the lab and we type in the final measurement results on the right side. We see that we distinguish between two different types of time on the very high level. And this is the blue bars, the blue parts or the blue bars representing cycle time. That's the value adding time during which a product is processed at the workplace. And this is always the time the customer or your customer or its internal customer or external customer is willing to pay for what you're doing. Most probably is willing to pay for the analysis it takes to do. And then we have also orange bars along the whole process. These are all non-value added periods or time periods. These can be waiting times. The sample is waiting in front of the machine. These can be layovers, transportation time, or manual writing information on a sheet of paper and then putting the sheet of paper in a stack and then taking that stack later on to type it in again into a digital system. So these are all the time periods the customer is not willing to pay for your work. And what we try to do in a very simple terms in regards of lean or with a lean implementation or a lean thinking is to create a process at the end which has non-waste time at all. So all the orange bars are cleaned out and we only would have throughput time which consists to 100% of value adding time. As we all know, this will be never possible, but this is basically the vision we drive for, and we drive for that in a continuous improvement manner and thinking of doing on a daily basis, continuous improvement, getting a little bit better every day to get rid of parts of the orange bars and replacing the orange bars with blue bars. And we do that on a plan, do, check, act, Deming cycle on a continuous improvement way. And we get better and better day by day, and we get near to the final or the North Star of 100% value adding processes, which would only include blue bars in this demonstration. Then we take the orange bars, I go shortly back, and distinguish in the lean point of thinking and a little bit more in details. It's very simple to say we just take all the things away which are non-value adding times. We distinguish these orange bars into 8 major waste forms, sorry. And this is, one is the defects and reworks. So if we measure something in the lab or produce something in a factory which we cannot use at all anymore, we have to throw it away and do it again. Or something we could still use, but we have to redo it. This is a waste form number 1. This waiting in front of a lab equipment or production equipment is another form. Overprocessing, which means that we have very complex, complicated processes in an administration environment or in a lab environment, which you would think could be organized way simpler. For example, you have to get the sample which achieved in the lab to fill in a form, then this form has to go somewhere else, then somebody has to type in this form, somebody will print out when the person is measuring the sample. When the sample is measured, somebody types it in again on an analog paper. Then that analog paper goes somewhere else, and somebody else is putting that back into a digital system. Sounds like a very complex, over-processed procedure. And it sounds also like we could reduce some of this waste. This is an example for over-processing. Transportation, we move samples from A to B to C. Motion, that doesn't mean that we don't move in a lab or somewhere else, but on the motion side, we have a main aspect on ergonomics. So we don't want to have unergonomic movements or motions, which will lead long-term to employees' issue and their health. Inventory is another form of waste. We see a lot of work in progress material being stocked in front of different machines. And all the 6 wastes around that middle waste, which is overproduction, we are with all the 6 waste forms around the overproduction, we get to 7 in total. Overproduction is the worst form of waste we have. Why is that? Due to the fact that overproduction means that we have produced something or measured something in the lab nobody needs. So we have put all the efforts, work efforts, hours, all the sampling material, all the needed other material in the lab into the production. We produced it or measured it in the lab. And finally, nobody needs our result or our measurement or our product at the end. And that's why it's the worst form of waste and is illustrated here in the middle, surrounded by the 6 other waste forms here, which are the original 7 altogether from Daiichi Ohno, from the Toyota production system. A lot of times, or most companies also add a number 8. That's why we end up with 8 types of waste, which is kills. And what does that mean is that we use people on the wrong places according to their available skills. So this is a management issue. So we waste the skills of the people due to the fact we don't put them on the right places where they can bring the most benefit for the company. Good. This is value creation and waste. This is also the basis for value stream mapping. We always have a look at the whole process also when we do value stream mapping, and we distinguish between adding value and non-adding value steps and try to get rid of the non-adding value steps or waste forms. Then when we get better, we do that in a continuous improvement way. Only continuous improvement allows us to live up to the vision of waste-free processes. That means we want to get rid of more orange bars with waste processes, that we get nearer to the only blue bar process with only value-adding time. So that's the vision of the waste-free process. We can and must always improve. So it's not like, yeah, we will improve when we get time in our company. In a continuous improvement company, it's part of the daily job to continuously improve what you're doing so that you get a little bit better every day. So it's not a breakthrough step change process thing. It's a small steps, one after the time, getting better towards the vision of waste-free processes. An excellent company is always continuously getting better and improving all their processes along the whole company. Okay, so this is the basis, value creation and waste, distinguish the creation or the value adding from the non-value adding time. Then we take the non-value adding time, put it into the 8 forms of waste. we figure out where we have the biggest opportunity along the 8 forms of waste, and then we continuously improve along the way and along the 8 forms of waste to get rid of them step by step as far as possible. And it's continuous because it's a never-ending story in all the companies worldwide, because your environment will change, you get new products, the market situation will change, so you will have so much change around your process. Even you would almost get there, you will never get there that you have 100% improvement done and you end up with having no idea left. Now, based on that, we build value stream mapping, or we use often value stream mapping and PPMN model as a tool to improve the processes along the company. What is a value stream mapping, or what do we understand under the word value stream? The value stream includes all activities that are necessary to produce or offer product or services. The value stream includes both value adding and non-value adding activities. So we do the same as we did at the beginning of the presentation in this bar chart. We take the whole process and we distinguish again between value adding and non-value adding time, but in a little bit more detail. From where do we want to start, for example, with the supplier to the customer, and we map the whole process. We will see an example later on how that looks and what does exactly mean. Value stream mapping includes 4 major steps. The first is we need to decide what product families or product flow processes we want to look at. Normally, it doesn't make sense to look at all the product flows at once because it's way too complex and you would lose a lot of time. So we have to figure out what processes and what product families make sense to look at. And normally we do that by looking at it in the way of what product families represent the major flow of the company. Then we map that process flow of the product family along the company, and also there we decide where do we start, where do we end. It probably doesn't make sense that we would start for 20 labs around the globe for that product family, for all the labs, and process design all the process flows along these 20 labs. Normally we start with one pilot lab which have this process family in place. They do the measurement on this process family, and then we run through that pilot lab from A to Z, where we define to start and to end. So this is not a scoping thing we have to do before we start. So we decide what product and where do we start and end for what, for example, lab worldwide for this company to test it. Then we map that process, do the current state visualization of the whole process. We see the 2 possible ways later on with value stream mapping and business process modeling notification. Then when we are done with the current state analysis, we do the future state design. So we always do current state, future state, number 2 and 3. And in the future state, we visualize the desired and optimized target, how it would be best for the company to do what we do today. And on top of that, we do also in the current state on top of that, we add also on the current state all possible improvement ideas. And all that together leads then to number 4, where we do, based on a gap analysis between the value stream design and the current state analysis, an implementation plan which shows us how we want to implement step by step from where we are to where we want to be in the future. A little bit in more detail, go back to number 1. This is how we define the process family. What products should we look at from where do we start to where do we end? And this is a typical selection matrix where we have product A to G along the process steps 1 to 8. And in this example, in this company, we decided we will run the value stream mapping for product A and B because they represent most of the steps. We see we have some gaps on number 3, but we live with that, and number 6. But other than that, we have all the other steps included. And we also know that A and B represents, for example, 70% of all the products. So after we have decided to run the value stream mapping on A and B, we go and do the effective work. And the question comes up, what does that bring us, or why do we do that? Or what's the benefit of a value stream mapping? We look in a few minutes at. And why we could not do something else. And what we see most commonly in industry, the major benefit is that we have a bird's eye view of the total company, of the total entire flow we look at. We recognize waste and its causes very fast. We start to speak a common language along the project team and later on, hopefully, along the whole company. We get a transparent view or transparency about the impact of decisions and the entire flow. And we don't make random decisions where we want to improve. And we don't do this cherry picking thing. So after we have done a straightforward overview of the current state flow with a value stream mapping, and we run that from A to Z for the process and with improvement ideas, we start to really bundle ideas in a way that we don't sub-optimize certain areas we would do before. And we really avoid cherry picking. So we do the best for the company, for the entire flow, and we improve later on where it makes most sense. If you run just Kaizen workshops or small Kaizens in different small teams along this process flow, it could happen that you optimize within these small teams or within these small areas certain things which are very important for these different small areas. But in total, it's not the optimum for the entire flow. And that's the major big benefit, that you really don't sub-optimize in certain parts of the company and really optimize for the entire flow. And you get a common language along all the people being involved and realizing how their work is related to other departments or groups, and also showing them clearly the connection between material flow and information flow. Both of it is part of the analysis, right? We do the material flow as the information flow. We connect them together and we see how information influences the material flow and the other way around. Example from a value stream mapping, which is the way it's normally done in the manufacturing environment. It's in German, but I think nevertheless you understand that there is always a customer top right, which has certain requirements in tons he needs per day, how many pieces, and the takt time. So in this case, it's about 100-gram chocolate tablets. And we see here that we have to deliver 100,000 pieces a day, or every 3.3 seconds at 12 pieces have to leave the company during production. And we have on the right, on the left top, the suppliers. They deliver 3 times a week. We have to deliver to the customer 2 times a week. And then on the bottom, from left to right, we see the whole internal flow from storage through molding, packing, cartoning, palletizing, and commission. And you see it's a little bit more complicated than the first chart we looked at because it has more information within these different process steps. So we look at cycle time, changeover time, production time, max output, machine availability, and so on. And we get each process step with all the key numbers being included. And very important is that we do that not out of system data, we do that in real environment. So we really go to the shop floor, we go and count the storage amount between, or the inventory stocks between the different process steps. We go to the floor and measure the cycle time. We go to the floor and see how many people work in each step. So really important, go to the Gemba, go where the process happened and take real-time data, and don't just trust on your systems. And with that, you see how long it takes to process the whole thing, and the whole throughput time, including storage at the end, at the beginning. And we see normally if we would follow or sit on a chocolate piece, it would take us in this factory 60 days to get through the whole process from when we get delivered to the storage due to the time we get delivered to the customer. And in these 60 days, according to this, we would only add value in 10 seconds. So we would sit 60 days, 2 months in this factory. And according to this scheme, it would be only roughly 10 seconds value gets added to us. That doesn't include the whole cooling, of the chocolate. But nevertheless, it's just showing one point of view, which is kind of, okay, where all this time goes lost, right? And there's some storage time mainly we lose on it. So storage at the beginning, at the end, you can argue if this makes sense or not. But there's also quite a lot of material being stored on the floor we probably could improve. And that's what we do next in this point of view. We sit together with the people and think about how we could improve along this process. So we could, we have a bottleneck machine, we could improve the storage situation, inventory situation on the floor and reduce it for these 8 and 4 tons, and so on. On top of that, you see on the top end of this graphic that we also do the information flow. So we see how the information from the order is coming into the plant, how we send the information to our customers, our suppliers, how the information flows through production planning and so on through the plant. And this information then gets combined with the material flow you see here, and all the information along the different processes which are written down below each process step in the process boxes with the different key numbers. And this gives so a good overview of the whole process that we can then really dedicate improvement ideas, and also doing this in a way for the overarching overall process and not cherry picking on, I need to improve my cartoning machine. I need to improve my palletizer because it has a lot of breakdowns. We really get a good understanding of the whole process, doing improvements where it makes most sense. Good. This is the one way we can do value stream mapping, the very common way in the manufacturing environment. I show you another typical thing we see more and more, and this is now how we do value stream mapping, or the so-called business process model and notification or notation in a more administrative environment. It can be a pure administration. It can be an ERP system with which we deal with a lot of different business processes. It can be that it's a lab environment where we want to see how the material and the information flows. The BPMN model is a standardized, commonly used and practiced notification, which is standardized in the way of what symbols are used and how it's built up. In the laboratory environment, it's mainly used to represent or present processes in a clear and structured way. And typically areas of applications are process documentation, detailed mapping of laboratory runs, e.g. sampling, analysis, and how processes get released. Optimization of workflows. We will see also on this flow, we can document detailed key numbers in a second step and find out what bottlenecks and potential for improvements we have. It's a standardized procedure with ISO certification. As I already mentioned, it's very useful to train and communicate to new employees or to make a training and update for current employees. And it's also a basis which is being used for automation of current processes along the way, also with software being used or implemented as LIMS system, for an example. How does it look like? It's probably very familiar for you. Basically, it distinguishes from the value stream mapping in a manufacturing environment in the way of we work with swim lanes. So we have customer, CMS, network providers as an example here for a certain process order to payment. And what we do then, when we have defined the swim lanes, we define the starting and end point of the process, as we did before as well in the value stream mapping for the production environment. Okay, order updated to order completed is the starting and end point. And then we run along the different swim lanes to see how the process flows. And as you see, due to the fact this is more in the administration environment, it's also more focused on the flow of information. So order received, then there's a decision, service availability check, yes, no, and so on. So we have the very common use process boxes with the symbols where we decide, make a decision, so mainly yes or no. Data complete, yes, we go here, no, we go here, and so on. And there's a few other more symbols we can implement over time, like is there an email, is there something else we need to think about when we run through these process steps. What we very commonly do, so we map first this process along the way with this simple symbols with process steps and decision points, starting, end point, intermediate points. Then we go through the process again and define what kind of media do we use, Excel, paper, ERP, LIMS, whatever system, and we color them. Here you see also different symbols done in another way. And then last but not least, we go through the process in a third step where we put times to the processes and other key numbers if needed to find out where the bottleneck is, how long does it take in total, and so on. And there it goes more and more into the also direction of a Makigami lean chart. But we start simple, most important, also for you when you want to try it out, step by step, and then add details in a second step in regards of what kind of media do we use, and then add even more details in the third step in regards of how long does what take, how much resources are being used, and so on, to find out about bottlenecks, throughput times, how much of the time is wasted and not wasted. Good. Short summary and overview of value stream mapping and process BPMN modeling. if somebody's interested to learn more about value stream mapping, I can recommend the basis of value stream mapping from Mike Ruther and John Jook, or Womack and Jones, which are involved with the preview and introduction. And it's called Learning to See, or in German Sehen lernen. And with that, I close, and I thank for your attention, and I'm open to questions, remarks, and thoughts and discussions. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Christoph, for this insightful session, also to share your experience, your knowledges, and also this kind of tools and methods that can be used. You certainly give us a lot to think about, from how we define waste to how we visualize and improve our value streams. I've received a number of great questions, but let's start with the first one. So what signals tells you that an organization is ready or not ready for a lean transformation?
Okay, very good question. Always some I get from time to time. So the first thing which is important to be ready is, I think you need to have a certain stability within your organization. Give you an example where you're not ready. If you're on a turnover, you don't make money, you have to make sure that you survive, and you have probably to cut out big parts of the business to get kind of on a stable situation again. It's really not the right time to do lean, right? to fix first the really basic issues you have within a company, and then you can add lean on top. So it needs to have a certain stability. If you're very shaky, unstable, if you try to add lean, it will just sink within the chaos. So that's number one. Number two, I think you need to know that you need a clear commitment from the Geschäftsführung, from the leadership team. So you need really to have top-down commitment. If you don't have that, it will also not work out, because a lot of that stuff is about mindset, culture, continuous improvement. It never ends, and this is the most important thing about it. The tools are not that heavy, but if the mindset is wrong, it will not work. I think that's number two.
You mentioned some very good points, also the commitment of the leadership team, and I think also of the transformation team, kind of the responsible teams and the teams which are included. So that's, from my point of view, kind of the basics and the preparation that needed to get or to start a transformation. Another question is, what kind of the pillars or the factors that made a successful transformation? Based on your experience, what kind of factors can hinder or kind of challenge a transformation?
As a commitment, again, first, commitment of the leadership team. Second, a plan, a roadmap, kind of, it doesn't need to be detailed from the beginning, but kind of an idea where you want to go, why you do that, the purpose, and what's the plan behind. And last but not least, resources and people, giving people time to do that work, to continuously improve. And you have to have all the three together. If you do everything right, commitment, plan, and have your vision ready, and you exactly know where to go, but you never give enough resources to that project or time available for the people, it will also not work, right? It's just like people are getting back to daily business, get in the firefighting daily business mode, need to do the urgent stuff first and don't do the important stuff, because that would be important but not urgent. It always falls to the important, not urgent bucket. What means that you do urgent every day, and you never start with lean transformation, and it will go away immediately or very fast.
Yes, very good points. It have to be clarified and also aligned before starting a digital or a lean transformation.
And adding resources, yeah.
Adding enough resources.
Or making resources available. Normally you don't need to add, probably you can make resources available, right?
Yes. Kind of at the time you mentioned, also the budget. And the skills, for sure.
Yeah.
Also the kind of a very important point.
Mm-hmm.
And another point, which leads also to a follow-up questions, what you mentioned before, how do you deal with cultural resistance related to the actual waste and the actual processes and what's in the people belief?
Yeah.
Without crushing or burning the people who are in this lean transformation.
Yeah, this goes now to change management, which is a big part of the lean transformation. So one thing is to clarify how your organization works, what kind of roles and responsibilities do you have, right? So you put that up. And then the other side is to do the change management along the way. So where do you start with people to get where you want to be? And change management is a very important part. If you just don't do that right, probability is very high that it will not work out. And there you have different models you can use or go along with Kotter, 7 steps, or we use normally the 4-chamber model, where first everybody is resistant. We need to know that, right? So everybody will first say no, and then the second chamber is where you get you confront yourself, but still in a negative, in brackets, way with the problem. The third one is you see a positive thing about it, and then number 4, you're fully in. And every person is going through these 4 steps or 4 chambers, and different persons just go different fast, or the speed is different. So that means that one person goes through these 4 chambers in 10 seconds and is already great, let's do it. And another person is still in chamber 2 after 2 months, right? And still saying, no, this doesn't make sense. Why should I do it? How does that help me? And so on. And what really helps through that is that you give people a clear view of what's in for them, not only in for the company. So you need to move people through these 4 steps to the number 4 as fast as possible. With some it's easy, with some it's very hard, and with some it's not possible at all. It also exists, right? And by doing that is like being very open, clearly explain why you do it, and also show them from the day one what is the benefit for them. And I think if they get a benefit for them, they are more willing to move, instead of, the company will increase their EBIT by 2%. Nice, good. So what? And that's also very important. So be really clear and know that there's a transformation. Everybody will go through a transformation in different speeds, and giving the people very fast an insight and what they gain from their personal life. Less stress, same work, relax going home. There's a lot of stuff there. That sounds good, right? So if I get the same work with less stress, or even more work with less stress, which helps the company and them, less chaos, better organization, easy systems to use, systems are running. I don't need to restart my LIMS system 5 times a day. I think there's nothing to say against it, right?
Yeah. Everyone should say yes. Hell yeah. Want to start. When we can start.
Yeah, but sometimes you forget to think about that and don't tell the people what's in for them.
Okay, because they have to find out, or?
Yeah, I'm sometimes not sure, but I have just, if you really think about that, I have done once a project in a factory only on 1 line, and then we just let it be, and then after 2 or 3 months, the people from the 2-3 other lines, they came to us and say it's unfair. And then we ask, what's unfair? Yeah, they have a proper work environment, they find their staff, they can work with less stress, And then we asked them, okay, do you want that as well? Yeah, sure, we want that. So they already saw the benefit, and we only have to implement it.
Oh, nice. I think that's a point where a good or a successful transformation starts.
Yeah.
That the involved employees wants to have the intrinsic motivation to want to have it by themselves.
And you could do the same in a lab. You could do that for a certain area and then just let it be, and they will talk to each other in the break. They say, oh, now it's very easy. I have less stress. I have systems which are running. I don't need to type this paper into the system every evening. And then they will come back to you and ask you. So they are already ready. They're already in Chamber 4. You don't need to transform them. You only need to implement. Very simple, right?
Yeah.
Let them move after pilot project through the transformation by themselves. And then they ask you to implement what they saw on the other place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing which is very important. And if you get that done right, it also works and it also sustains, because people remember how it was in old times. They don't want to go back after, right? If it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sooner or later, I tell you, it was always that way. And if somebody new comes, it was always like that. And then we really like, you don't do that difference. And then you have to transform probably again because you find another good way or even better way.
I agree on that. Yeah, I can rely on. I know this sentence very well. Out of my own curiosity, so how do you differentiate between unnecessary complexity and what's pure waste? Because sometimes production processes can be highly complex, and you can't get rid of any kind of steps in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mean unnecessary complexity?
Unnecessary, yeah, or necessary complexity that it has to be like this, related to the production flow or production process, and related to the differentiation of pure waste.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting discussion. We also get more and more now with AI and Industry 4.0 and digitalization, because Lean is built up on a kind of I make it a little bit black and white. Probably some Lean guys would not agree with me, but Lean is kind of a linear thinking stuff, right? We want to eat best way we can have in a factory, in a lab. We have one line for each product.
Yeah.
And then we have it straight line, properly tacked out, and we measure this thing in this line, this line, this line, this line, this line, and have it properly distinguished, and it's probably tacked out, and probably blah 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 blah, right? And it's kind of a linear parallel system thinking mainly. And now people are coming in, and we know the world is a little bit more complex, and that we can probably not buy a lab line for each type of measurement. And there's some people arguing about that worldwide. There's also other systems out there. They think about that and saying we need to deal with complexity different than just parallelizing straight Lean processes, right? Probably doesn't make sense. And with now getting AI, digital systems, and all that stuff in, that's getting more and more possible, right? To say we have cross-flow. Lean would hates cross-flow. Doesn't allow cross-flow. These guys say it doesn't matter. Let's flow all the stuff around the lab in the most optimal way, and we have a smart software that figures it out day by day, and the things flow all over the place differently day by day, and you don't do this linear thing which takes way more capacity at the end, right? Because they have to spare capacity.
Yeah.
And they accept kind of the complexity and just deal with it with smart tools, digitalized tool. And Lean always tries to reduce complexity, right? So it's like, oh, we hate complexity. How can we get rid of all that? How we can streamline it, linearize it, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end, it's two philosophies, two ways of thinking. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think we should combine it together. And I think it gives us, with all the softwares, AI tools, whatever tools coming up, a lot of opportunity to deal with complexity in a different way than we would do it in a pure Lean way. And we should combine the two worlds together at the end and find out what makes most sense.
That's very interesting. Yeah, didn't saw it on that point. To bring the session to an end, do you have any kind to share, some last words, some quote or tips, tricks, hacks you want to share with the world related to lean transformation?
Yeah, I think if you want to start, really make, and you say, I think what we hear a lot is like you have no resources available. That's your first problem. So make your resources available, get some time out of people. And then I think most three important things you do first, go to the Gemba, see stuff in real time. Second, you ask if you have a standard for these processes you go and see. Because only when you have a standard, you see deviation, and only when you see deviation, you can improve.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, make sure that you stay on it and continuously improve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a 1 week or 2 weeks journey. It's a continuous improvement mindset means that you stay for that forever, and it will be a never ending story.
Yeah, I think also that's kind of a mind shift, mindset shift, to have a project which has a start and a finish line instead of having a continuous improvement, which kind of is a mindset.
Yeah, it's different to an implementation project of a software tool or a machine, and then we get it up and running, and then Lean takes over and improves it forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks very, very much for this valuable inputs and insights. And with that, we come to the end of today's webinar. So on behalf of Christoph and the entire team in OneLimbs, thanks for spending your time with us. We hope you leave this session with more clarity, a few new questions, and the motivation to look at your processes with fresh eyes. Let's stop the chaos and start designing a flow. So we've been delighted to welcome you back in one of our next events. And until then, stay curious, keep improving, and feel free to reach out. Have a great day, a nice afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye.